Welcome to Pinsire Basketball Live. Today we are talking about Ochai Agbaji, how good the Toronto Raptors are going forward. How good can this team actually be? How good would they be if they weren't sort of stealth tanking right now? And we're going to talk about what an extension for Ochai could possibly look like. Now, there's been a lot of talk about extensions in Raptors land, and we're also going to talk about that. Now, if y'all let me know, am I being slightly laggy, or is that just me right now? Just let me know. Okay. So, as it pertains to Ochai Agbaji, I think that he is definitively one of the most improved players in the NBA this year. And I think that it's worth noting that just because you are significantly improved based on who you were in the past does not necessarily mean that you are some great player that deserves some massive extension. I think that Ochai Agbaji last year was very much on the fringes of being out of the league. I think he was in Jordan Nwora talks. I think he was in that territory of kind of where Davion Mitchell finds himself right now. Whereas if you can't shoot the three in the NBA as a wing who's not overly creative, I'm not really sure what the role is for you going forward. But it's worth noting that Ochai Agbaji has beat the allegations, okay, because he has been awesome this year. How awesome has he been? Well, he's contributing to winning in a major way. He's not a multifaceted player in any way, but he is an above average or slightly above average rim finisher, and he's one of the best corner three-point shooters in the league. It's a lot of catch and shoot stuff. It's being created for him. He's open on a lot of these. He's not exactly generating offense for himself. Talks about, is he Josh Hart, need to probably cool down, but we'll talk about what he needs to do to get to that level or get to that level eventually. We'll also talk about that today because I think that that's very, very important as well. But as it pertains to the larger picture, what an extension looks like and what Ochai Agbaji has done this year, I think we need to look at how much he's contributing to winning. And if you look at this, you'll notice that the Raptors have some positive players. And right down here, they have some players maybe who are playing a little bit too much right now. Now, you live with Jamal Shed and Jacoby Walters playing despite having negative win shares. You'll take their negative analytics, the negative 3 point, at negative 6.3, negative 6.5 box plus minus. You'll take that because they're rookies. And frankly, teams lose minutes with rookies all the time. But the Raptors do have a couple of rookies that have contributed majorly to winning, which is Jamison Battle and Jonathan Movo. They also have Scotty Barnes, who I don't think is necessarily performing as well as he could be. They also have a guy who's missing from their lineup, which is Emmanuel Quickly. And the question then is this who Emmanuel Quickly is? Or is he much closer to his, let's say, Knicks production, even last year? He's probably at worst Chris Boucher level impact on winning, Jamison Battle impact on winning, Jakob Pertl impact on winning. And with the Knicks, it's worth saying he actually contributed even more to winning than Jakob Pertl does right now, which is to say that he was around, if we looked at Emmanuel Quickly's stats for a sec, if you just look at his win shares per 48 and how much this guy has impacted winning, that's a career high. That's like right there. The version of him that he was for the Knicks last year was a progression on that 0.149 win shares per 48. That's again, it was as a backup guard. He didn't start a single game during that. But even for the Raptors, you can understand that if Emmanuel Quickly is in a good position, he absolutely, absolutely has a chance to add 5, 6, 7 wins to the Raptors. He added 6.7 wins to the Knicks. So, what's Ochai Agbaji contributing? Ochai Agbaji has been awesome for the Raptors. Again, 1.8 win shares already puts him as second on the team, right? He has contributed winning in a really major way. And it's important to realize that his role is super low usage. He's not doing anything that he can't do with better players. There's nothing that he's doing right now. The only thing that would be different is his minutes would go down a little bit if the Raptors were healthy. But in terms of like what he's doing, can he do this with more talented players? Yes. In fact, you might even argue that everything he's doing right now is almost in spite of the spacing, because certainly if you look at his shot chart, which we can take a look at right here, there's nothing on this shot chart that is not replicable with better players, right? Right here, we see league average, finishing in the paint, 59.3%. He's at 60.7. I guarantee if we looked at his last year's shot chart, it did not look this promising. 42% from the left corner, 52.9% from the right corner, albeit on low volume. So what does Ochai Agbaji? There's nothing really above the break here. There's nothing really to talk about in the mid range. That's not really a part of his game right now. Could it come? Could that come? That will be the game changer for the Raptors, right? If you look at where he is right now, these are the closer threes. This is the furthest three, right? These are the far out threes, and he's not really making those. But this is about as close as you're going to get in the NBA to college range 3-pointers. And so if you can start to extend his game out a little bit, where he can occasionally hit an above the break three, he can become a little bit more voluminous with his corner threes. If he can become a little bit more of a self-generator of offense, potentially in those lineups that are deprived of offensive talent, I think that this is a stretch. This is a stretch. Norm 2020 vibes. I mean, he's very, very far away from that, but he's perfected what he is. So what is he? Right? Is he a fifth starter? Is he an eighth man? Is he a ninth man? I think on a good team, he's like a 10th man. I think that's about as high as I'm willing to go right now. And it's worth noting he's 24 years old. It's also worth noting that last year he was a no man. That might sound a little bit mean, but he really was one of the worst basketball players in the league last year. And to go from being one of the 20 worst basketball players, 25 to 30 worst basketball players in the NBA last year, being in, very much Malachi Flynn territory of impact, to go from that to being at least at best like a top 230 player in the NBA, 200, maybe we can go as far as that. His true shooting is elite. His defensive versatility is awesome. His rim defense for a guard who's 6'4", 6'5" has been really good. We've seen plenty of times when, the defense gets beat, the Raptors' non-existent, paint defense is nowhere to be seen. And then boom, here comes Ochai with a block, or here comes Ochai with a contest. He does a lot of that. He's also a really solid athlete, transition athlete, seems to be a really good kid. In terms of an extension, what does that look like? I'm willing to go on the upside of around 11 million a year. Based on the limited sample size of what we've seen so far, I think that's probably on the high end of what I'm willing to offer him. I don't think there will be a competing offer for him that's much higher, but I think he'll be in play for a mid-level exception from somebody because of the low usage, portability that he provides at 24 years old. This is very much in line with the Aaron Wiggins, Aaron Neesmith, just comparing him to a bunch of Aarons, right? So the Raptors overpay brings him to 15 million a year. I think that's a little too rich. If he had done this for 3-4 years in a row, and this is just who he was, I think we can certainly talk about 15 to 16 million. But in today's NBA, where it's very feast or famine when it comes to contracts, and pretty much, you've got guys like, I don't think it's absurd to say that you get a better player than him with your Portland pick next year. I don't think that's crazy to say at all. If you're gonna go for, if you're thinking right now, what's the gap between him and Jacoby Walter next year, or him and Jamison Battle, it's not a huge gap. The problem is, or let me say the problem is, there's no problem with having all of them on the team, because they don't really get in each other's way. They're all a little bit different. They all do slightly different things, and they can all play together. There's no reason that you can't play a lineup of Jacoby, Jamison Battle, and Ochai Agbaji if the other two starters are like all stars. That's a perfect role player assembly for that. There's also a bigger complication, which is the Raptors have 10 wings right now. If you really want to think about this roster from the perspective of roster building, the Raptors have 10 wings. Let me count them out for you, right? Let me unhighlight everybody and just go through the wings on this team. And you can let me know in the chat or the comments after, if you're watching, who are the best wings. Now, DJ Carton is gone, but Jacoby Walter, right? Ochai Agbaji, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Jonathan Mobo, Grady Dick, Jamison Battle, AJ Lawson, who is not on this list because he hasn't played a game for the Raptors yet, Garrett Temple, and is there another one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bruce Brown, 9. And then AJ Lawson, 10. So there's your 10 wings, right? And Chosen saying Ochai ain't stepping on any toes. That's exactly it. Ochai Agbaji doesn't get in anyone's way. And he is a perfect 9th to 10th guy on your roster. So you've figured that out. The issue for the Raptors right now is you've got 6 or 7 guys who ideally fit in as the 9th to 10th guy on a roster. Right now, if you look at these guys, Jacoby Walter probably isn't playing for most winning teams right now, but I'm very, very excited about his future going forward. Garrett Temple isn't playing for many teams, so these are not the guys I'm talking about. Jamison Battle probably wouldn't be playing for a lot of teams, but I think that his value so far, if he keeps this kind of production up, is 10th guy value. Grady Dick right now, on a really good team, probably is the 9th to 10th guy. But right now, he's your 4th starter. Jonathan Mobo, 10th guy, 8th guy, 9th guy. Scotty Barnes, okay, that's a star. He starts on every single team in the league. RJ Barrett, probably a 6th man in a lot of situations, maybe a 3rd starter, 4th starter for some teams. Ochai Agbaji, 10th guy. So it kind of like when you're looking at it, building long term, do you hope that Ochai Agbaji can grow into more? Jacoby can grow into more. That's the goal. That's the goal. So speaking specifically of Ochai, what's the model? Josh Hart. I think Josh Hart is the model. Because as good as Ochai is defensively, he's not a stopper. He's not Herb Jones. He's not OG Anunoby. But he can be Josh Hart, where his impact can just be through effort and energy and scrappiness and diving for loose balls and being versatile on that end. He's not a lockdown defender like a Dyson Daniels or, a Herb Jones or, even a Jalen Suggs, Keon Ellis. I've seen a lockdown defender. Ochai ain't it. But he's a competent defender who is versatile. Josh Hart. He needs to rebound better. He needs to become more of a playmaker. He needs to become a little bit more tenacious pursuing his offense. I think that would help considerably. Right now, his usage is very low. I mean, he's a 13.5% usage guy. If we sort for usage, the only players with lower usage than him are Garrett Temple and Ulrich Shumshay. So we need to see that climb up to at least 17, 18%. If you want to look at Josh Hart as the model for what Ochai Agbaji should want to be, this is Josh Hart in a nutshell. And again, Josh Hart grew into this. He's 29 years old now. So if you want to look, yeah, there's Josh Hart, 13.5% usage. He's a low usage player. He's a super low usage player. Even this year on the Knicks, he's 14.4% usage. He's not a guy who gets in anyone's way. Josh Hart could fit into every single lineup. Another guy that maybe Ochai might want to model himself after is Gary Payton II. That's another guy. But as you can see, Josh's numbers, he's just better. His true shooting percentage is even higher, 68%. 2 years ago for the Knicks, it was 70.3%. Low usage has to come with elite efficiency. And for Ochai Agbaji, is it coming with elite efficiency? Yeah, to some extent it is. But I think that it's worth noting that when we're talking about, the holes in his game or whatever, how far he's come. Let me show you when I said that he was just this bad. This is the gap between last year and this year. We've seen a jump of 5 points per 100 possessions. We have seen a jump of 5% from the free throw line, which is still not good enough at all. 66.7% from the free throw line is not good enough. We've seen a jump in terms of assists, a maintenance in terms of steals, right? The 3-point percentage has jumped 23%. The field goal percentage has jumped 13%. I mean, these are massive jumps, but the field goal attempts have not. The field goal attempts per 100 possessions have actually dropped. He's never been high usage. At any point in his career, he has never been high usage. His career high usage is literally 15.8%. So if you're the Raptors and he's going to be your 5th starter, Dante DiVincenzo would be not even close. Like not even a chance in hell that he turns into Dante DiVincenzo. Like if you look at DiVincenzo's analytics and just his game overall, this ain't it. But to be this sort of, and again, people really do gas up percentages, right? They see 44.7% from three and they're like, this is like the best 3-point shooter in the world. He's not. That volume of threes that you see highlighted there, right there, this needs to go up. The volume needs to go up to like 8, 9. So right where he was as a rookie, that's where we need to get to. We need to get to 9. And I don't care if that percentage drops to 38%. I'll take 9 attempts from three per 100 possessions at 38% over 6.3 at 44.7, right? I'll take a more diverse diet of threes. I'll take a couple of created, pull-up threes as opposed to everything catch and shoot, everything in the corner. Now, I think that it's important to realize that you're building up a player slowly. So you've fixed a couple of issues, right? Number one issue you fixed right here is efficiency. A 20% jump in effective field goal percentage is absolute madness. So you figured that part out of it. That's a very, very good thing to figure out. You slowly develop that assist percentage and try to bring it up to 13 to 14, where he can do a little bit stuff maybe in the short roll. Maybe he can do a little bit more in transition. He can be a little bit more forceful attacking the rim. But you have figured out this most value, the most impressive part of this is to go from negative 6.5 box plus minus to 0 is an absurd jump. I can't think of 2 players in the league who've taken a 6.5 box plus minus jump this year. And Ochai is that guy. He's just been more impactful across the board. And the situation has only gotten worse for him. It hasn't gotten better. It's not like he's playing with better talent necessarily. I mean, he's playing with marginally better talent because a lot of his minutes last year with the Raptors came in very, very bad lineups, but he's certainly not playing with more talent right now than he was playing in Utah last year with Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton and John Collins and those guys. Like, definitely he was playing with more talent in Utah, and he was awful in Utah. So, I think that it's just worth noting that Ochai at his second stop has just been, he got way worse for a little bit, and now he's gotten just way better. So I'm perfectly comfortable with anywhere from 8 to 12. That's my range for him, and I'm baking a lot of upside and hopeful growth into that. I'm also cool with trading him. I'm also completely fine with trading him. I don't think that it's the most hard to replicate thing. It would suck. Seems like a really good guy. Seems like the type of guy that you want to keep. But what's the deal that gets you to budge? I don't know. 2025 first round pick. If some contender comes knocking, like the Lakers or something like that, and they're like, hey, you know what we really need? We need a 10th guy who can just knock down shots and isn't going to make a fuss about touches. And we really want to put this guy next to a LeBron James and an Anthony Davis to help us out. Here's our, first round pick. Not that they have their 2025 first round pick, but a 2029, 2030, whatever first round pick. Yeah, I think you got to look at it from that perspective. It's also worth noting the Raptors moved off of a really low value first to get him. So if you convert him for a high value first or a higher value first, I consider that a win. This is exactly what asset farming is, man. We're just going to have to take the punches as it goes. But one thing that I'm not going to do, and one I'm very, very much trying not to do as I pump enthusiasm and optimism into the air about the Toronto Raptors, is lose perspective on who players actually are. All right. I don't want to get into that situation where we start talking about players like they're all-stars when they're not. We don't want to get into a situation again where we're talking about guys like all NBA franchise level players or MVP candidates when they're barely sub all-stars. We really don't want to get into that perspective, right? Now, the concept of overrated and underrated, it's ebbs and flows, right? Sometimes a guy gets a little bit overrated and then he becomes massively underrated in the same sentence, literally a week later. So I think that there are certain players on this team that are getting maybe a little bit kind of falling under the radar. And then there are certain players that are just getting gassed up a little bit too much because their numbers look a little bit better. Obviously, discussed one of those players that I think is getting a little bit overrated, which is RJ Barrett. But also, in the attempt to correctly rate him, I think some people go to the other extreme and start underrating him. It's the same thing with Davion Mitchell, right? The passer rating has been good. The point of attack defense has been good, but don't lose the forest from the trees. There's a lot that's wrong there too. Kelly Olynyk is another example, where, yeah, sure, you can sell yourself on the idea of his passing, But can you look at the defensive regression? Jakob Poeltl is another example where, yes, the passing has been good, the scoring has been good. He's been, arguably one of your top 3 players by far, actually, not arguably, undisputably, he's been one of your top 3 players this year. But can we keep a buck? He's still not a player who can shoot. He's still not a player who spaces the floor. And, he's still not a player who is anchoring anything in terms of your defense. So Chosen saying Kelly's just old, to be honest. He's not that old, man. I feel bad. I feel bad calling players who are 3-4 years younger than me old, but it's true. By NBA years, Kelly is probably on he's definitely on the regressive side. However, there are 2 things that really help players age well, and that's shooting and intelligence. And, hopefully Kelly will find a way to be a valuable role player either for the Raptors or for a contender at the trade deadline. Okay. I feel like I'm trying to edge towards talking about this, but I just want to talk about it because I think that it's important to kind of get it into the air. Now, y'all been with me for 2-3 years. Some of you have just discovered us recently, and to that I say thank you. But there was something that happened in Raptorland yesterday that I was made aware of, and different podcasters, we all sort of talk about each other's points. Some of us are very direct about it. Like I'll just, if I don't like something that someone said, I'll just say I don't like what this person said, but I've tried to keep it a little bit more respectable. And one of the things that I mentioned a few weeks ago that I did not like was that Louis Zatzman and Samson Folk talked about Davion extension, and they alluded to some numbers that I felt vastly overstated Davion's value. There was also a film breakdown by Raptors Republic, which I just genuinely felt kind of glossed over some of the issues with Davion. And I think, it's very difficult when you have a bias towards a player or, a bias against or bias for a player to cover them fairly, right? I'll be very transparent. I love Scotty. I love, Jacoby. I love, Jonathan Mobo, there, Ulrich, so when Ulrich has a 3-point game in the G League, maybe I don't talk about it too much, right? But when Ulrich has like a 12-point game, I'm probably going to talk about it a little bit more, right? When Ulrich has those 6 block games, I'm like, look at the future. But when Ulrich gets lost, on back-to-back defensive possessions, maybe I'm just looking the other way a little bit. I think we all have that sort of human bias where we like certain things, we don't like certain things. We have biases that sort of paint our perspective on what we're watching on the basketball court. And what I've never really liked or enjoyed is just dismissing something that doesn't agree with our perspective as weird or, at least without even trying to understand it. So yesterday there was a charge that was laid against me, and I believe it is against me, even if it's not directly against me. You'd have to be, the dumbest person in the world to not understand this was absolutely, calling me out. And all I'll appreciate is that if you're going to call me out, call me out directly. Don't do the passive aggressive, beat around the bushes thing, call me, different things and suggest that I'm weird. So let's just listen to the clips and y'all can piece it together. I've snapshotted three clips, which I think are perfectly fair. This is not me dismissing or inventing narratives. These are their words. Okay. So these are the words. Hear it. And
than minimum, more than like a rookie.
This is regarding Davion Mitchell's extension talk, potentially what he's worth. There was a introduction to this topic that it was a mailbag question. Cool. But this particular outlet, Raptors Republic, has led a lot of positive coverage on Davion. And I think some of it is actually warranted. And it's really nice to evaluate, a defensive prospect. So I think that it's perfectly fine that you can be really high on a particular player. Like right now, I'm very high on Jacoby Walter and his analytics are terrible. So, there's a chance that I fall flat on my face next year if he keeps this up and he keeps shooting, 25% from 3. That'll look quite stupid. Last year, I was very high on Ochai Agbaji at the trade. And then after I watched him play for the Raptors for 26, 27, 28 games, I was just like, I don't know, this guy's an NBA player. So I don't know, man. But this is the entire context of the conversation around the Davion extension. Okay, so this is what they said.
More than minimum, more than like a rookie, but something like 7-8 million a year might be friendly for the team. Who knows if Davion would take something like that?
Okay, diagram the sentence. 7 to 8 million would be friendly for the team. The team in this context is the Raptors. But who knows if Davion would take that? As in, perhaps Davion thinks he's worth more than 7 to 8 million. Cool.
He might get a little bit more money elsewhere, but I think there's probably a happy medium somewhere below 10.
Cool. So that is what was said. This is what was introduced as the response to that.
Okay. Below 10, I think he probably tries to get closer to like 12. But then,
Worth noting, he tries to get closer to 12 is not the same as the following statements. He should get more than 12. He should get 12. I guarantee he'll get 12. Nobody said anybody guaranteed jack shit. Okay. However, y'all can stop talking about Cade Cunningham in the chat. This ain't a Pistons pod. I don't really care about Cade. Cade did a great job yesterday. Cool. Derailed.
again, like how free agency went this past offseason.
Gary just got the minimum.
Okay, perfect. And so credit where credit is due. They do bring up the fact that free agency was really tough for players in that 11 to $22 million range, and that a lot of players who might have been expecting to get a mid-level did not get the mid-level. And that was partially due to the fact that the mid-level exception is now a convertible asset. We haven't really seen it converted so far, but in years past, when you didn't use your mid-level, you just lost it. There was nothing else you could do with the mid-level. Now you can trade your mid-level as a trade exception. So teams now look at that and say, do I want to give this guy my mid-level, or do I want to hold on to the mid-level as potentially a trade chip? Okay. This is, so what did I say about it? What I said clearly was that this is crazy, that this is a massive overestimation of Davion's value. Okay, because I think conversations around Davion Mitchell potentially getting an extension start with minimum to $4 million. I think $4 or $5 million is a very rich contract. And if you're going to say, well, he was an X lottery pick, I would say, well, there's plenty of X lottery picks who are out of the league right now after their first contract. Ochai was literally going to be one of them last year before he turned it around this year. Okay, so this is what was said afterwards.
So this is a mailbag episode. News flash, everybody. We discuss what listeners ask us.
To me, that's passive aggressive. But continue.
So you and I discussed, we were asked about Davion's extension the last time we did this. And we discussed, like, and again, an extension is usually a larger contract. Guys don't extend for less. Guys don't extend
for less. Sure.
And for the minimum, typically.
Yeah.
So we're discussing Davion's because we got asked about it. And
see, the implication here is we were discussing Davion because we were asked about it. But that is a little bit misleading because you literally, your channel and the people surrounding your channel, which is these two plus Esfandiar Barhani, have led the overwhelming positive coverage on Davion all year. We're talking articles in Forbes. We're talking video breakdowns. We're talking Davion has turned around his NBA career, full film analysis. So acting like, hey, don't come at us, it was just a question that was asked of us, is a little disingenuous. You probably have a lot of questions that are asked of you that you don't answer. You chose to answer this one, and you answered it the way you chose to answer it. Okay. So that's not really a fair point, but sure.
you know, you said like the Raptors, I went back and watched it because I got a sassy reply.
Sassy reply. Man.
And you said like around 7-8 million. I said if there was an extension, he'd want to try for 12 million around the mid-level, but that basically doesn't exist. And then we mentioned that Gary Trent Jr. is on the minimum.
Factually true.
And then we moved on. And I got this. I've seen it several times that people think that we were saying like guaranteeing that Davion's going to get a $10 million contract.
That's a straw man. So I don't know what comments they read about the guaranteeing, but that's broken telephone. I certainly did not say you guarantee that he was going to get 12 million to 10 million, but by their own words, one of these two said 7 to 8 would be friendly for the team, then said 10 would be a happy medium. The other said 12 million would be likely what he would be looking at. And then he pretty much said, but look at how difficult free agency was. Now, here's the point. This, up until this point, is perfectly fine. You're addressing comments that were made directly to you. But now you're going to take a shot at somebody else. And that person
plays well, plays a string of good games. You're going to see content, work about it. But randomly, like 6 days after that video came out, there's just a slew of comments being like, what the hell? And all like within like a 3-hour time frame.
I wonder what happened.
And so I was like, why do people think we're saying this one? Why?
Because you said it. You didn't guarantee it, but you're certainly on the side of, one, bring Davion back, which his play has not warranted. Two, that he is worth, at least, you didn't guarantee he's going to get it, but you're alluding that he's worth or he thinks he's worth. I mean, those two things are not the same, but 7 to 8 is friendly for the team. 10 is a happy medium, implies the following. 10 is what he's worth, because typically when you sign for a contract, it's usually a compromise between what they want to pay you and what you want to get paid. So if you want to get paid 12 and they want to get, you want 12, they want to give you 8. You sign for 10 and everyone congratulates themselves and says, good deal. So again, my issue with this entire podcast was 10 million for Davion is insane based on how he's played. There's also this illusion that when a player plays well, there's going to be content about him, which I agree with as someone who makes content about players playing well. Jacoby Walter has a good game. Ulrich has a good game. I make content about it. Jonathan Mobo flashes some awesome defense. Scotty Barnes flashes some point guard skills. RJ Barrett flashes some progression. I'll make a video about it. That makes sense. However, Davion was in the midst of 11 of 13 games, I think, with like -7, -8 boxes minus. So you're really overlooking the overall impact. You're overlooking the team construct. You're overlooking a lot of things to present one tidbit of him, which is, hey, he's not turning the ball over as much as he was. He's taking on more responsibility, and look at the point of attack defense. So I think that that's a little disingenuous. And the only reason I flagged it, the only reason I responded to it, is not to tear down another content creator, but to present why I loudly disagree with this notion that Davion Mitchell is an average NBA player, because he's not.
Is there like a quick successive negative reaction? And I was like, is somebody poisoning the well? That's a weird thing. Like that happens in politics, you know?
This is the height of my issue with this. That happens in politics. I'll let this play run out.
Like, I don't know. I thought it was weird. It confused me.
Did it?
Like, this is like very innocuous basketball talk, but it's like, emboldened tribalism.
Oh, the dog whistling is insane. Emboldened tribalism when you as a content creator have led numerous storylines against the best player on this team. When you yourself, in the very podcast that I'm referencing here, suggested and said that the numbers say the Raptors are worse on offense with Scotty Barnes. Well, when we use our eye test for one thing and use the numbers for the other thing, the numbers also say that the Raptors are the worst team in the league with Davion Mitchell on offense, right? No? Why are we using numbers for one thing? What does your eye test tell you? Why is it eye test when you like a guy and numbers when you don't like a guy? That's not consistent to me. See, if you're going to use numbers, use them for everything. If you're going to use eye test, use it for everything. If you're going to use both, then use it for everything. The eye test tells me that Scotty Barnes has played some very weird lineups. He has absolutely carried a lot of bench units. The eye test also tells me that RJ Barrett is also playing some very weird lineups. So you'll always give RJ the benefit of the doubt that he'll be more efficient when there's more spacing around him. I don't need to be a basketball genius to be able to tell you that RJ Barrett is not going to be this inefficient when Emmanuel quickly comes back. I don't need eye test or numbers to tell me that. I need common sense to tell me that. Okay. The eye test is also telling me that Davion Mitchell has some serious holes offensively and defensively. He doesn't guard well at the rim. He does not. He's great point of attack. He does often navigate screens well, but he often doesn't. He's not the most consistent transition defender. He's not necessarily the greatest with the communication. He often loses his man. He's often getting cut backdoor. All of these things matter. But if you want to present a case that a guy that you like is this great defensive player, you can find one. If I want to present a case right now that Ulrich Shamshay would come out and win Defensive Player of the Year, and I just sequence 10 blocks, if I just sequence 10 blocks from the G League and just say, okay, look, Ulrich is this great defender, that's disingenuous basketball coverage, because Ulrich is not a great defender right now. He is at best an average G League defender who has a very overwhelming potential and talent for specific things on defense. Right? That's fair. If I want to say that RJ is this great scorer, then I need to have some sort of numbers that back that up. I need to look at that. There's this sort of cherry picking of analytics and numbers and stats and eye test and whatever. And I just don't think that it's fair. The cherry picking always leans into the bias. Okay. When you look around the league at the Peyton Pritchards, the Tyus Jones, whatever you consider a league average backup point guard, does your eye test tell you that in a league where Tyus Jones got the minimum, where DeLon Wright got the minimum, players who are vastly better than Davion Mitchell, that Davion Mitchell would be team friendly at 7 to 8 million? Is that team friendly? That he would want 12, that he would want 10? Shit, he thinks he's the best defender in the league. He might want 15. Wanting and deserving and getting are not the same thing. So I just wanted to address that with a very, very specific note of, if you're going to talk about somebody, talk about them directly. If you're not going to talk about them directly, then don't talk about it at all. But do not accuse people that don't agree with you, or people who literally play your clip and say, I disagree with this, of tribalism, political speak, dog whistle. This is dog whistle. To me, this is dog whistle. Because really, like, when you're dog whistle, everything in terms of dog whistle politics is about alluding to something without directly addressing it, right? Maybe I'm stupid, but that's my definition of dog whistle, right? So when you say, something about a particular race being being, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of politicians who, use this sort of political speak. I don't understand. I'm not a political person. I don't I don't ascribe to this. I'm very direct, very blunt, sometimes too blunt, sometimes to my own detriment person. I don't appreciate being called political by someone who I think is the walking epitome of political. That to me is like a lack of self-awareness. So I just wanted to bring that up, address it very directly, because some of you messaged me and said, what do you think of this comment? This is what I think of this comment. I think this comment is shit. And hey, man, that door has been opened many times and has never been walked through. So, I'm not against it, but I don't think there's common ground sometimes, right? Look, as we look forward on this team, Basketball Reference has a way to project wins, expected win-loss percentage, right? The Raptors currently have 7 wins on the season. However, Basketball Reference has them as a 10-win team right now, right? When you sum up, like, there's this, call it, misconception that win shares, as they are calculated by analytics, are just measuring specifically wins. They're not, because wins are like per minute wins. They're not per game. So, for instance, if you win 97% of the game, and in the final 3%, you give up a 20-0 run and lose that game, Basketball Reference is still going to count that as an expected win for you to some extent, right? Like you played really, really well that game. And depending on what you did in that final 3%, maybe it'll count as a half win or something like that. But the Raptors is currently structured as they played right now, have 10 wins on the season per the analytics and 7 wins in reality, which means they are underperforming by 3 wins. There are certain teams that are overperforming. The Raptors are drastically underperforming. And I could argue that the Raptors are probably doing this better than any team in the league. Because if we look at the other terrible teams, give me one sec here. So I'm actually curious about this. So this is the Raptors' expected win-loss based on their net rating, based on the defense they played, based on the offense they played, based on the players they played. 10-18. Some people said, would prime Marc Gasol bring you to 500? Well, you've had a disaster schedule so far. I think we can all agree that the Raptors have had a really tough schedule. The Raptors schedule does get a lot easier from here. They have the 7th easiest record, or the 7th easiest schedule from here on out. So the toughest part of your schedule is gone. If you play Emmanuel Quickley and Bruce Brown, and you don't play Davion Mitchell as much as you've played him, and you add in the context of some of the load that's making RJ inefficient makes him a little bit more efficient, I argue right now, you're 13-15. 13-15 with the easiest part of your schedule remaining. That's not a bad team. Take a look at another team, the Houston Rockets this year. Let's see what their actual win-loss and expected win-loss is. I'm just curious to see this. Break this out here. So their expected win-loss is 19-8. They're 18-9. That's around what you expect to happen. Let's look at the Charlotte Hornets. They are 7-21. Their expected win-loss is 9-19. So they're underperforming by 2 wins. Again, the Raptors are still clearing in that. I'm actually curious. The Washington Wizards might be doing this better than the Raptors right now because the Washington Wizards have managed to lose some incredible games. Take a look here. Their expected win-loss. Their expected win-loss is 4. Their record is 4. Okay, so far, the +3 that the Raptors have is the best mark in the league. If there is one team that I think might be doing this better than the Raptors, it's the Utah Jazz because they have crumbled late in a lot of games. Hang on one second here. Expected win-loss is 7-20. The record is 7-20. Jeez. So the Raptors and the Hornets so far. The Hornets are -2. The Raptors are -3. These are the best tank jobs in the league. What about the Nets? The Nets' expected win-loss 10-18. They're actually overachieving by 1 win. That's interesting. So their expected win-loss is 10-18, which is ironic because that's the Raptors' expected win-loss. So the Raptors should be pretty much where the Nets are right now in the standings, except they're 4 games worse, which is interesting. Because it's interesting because like when somebody underachieves, somebody else has to overachieve. There's always, in the end, there's always the same number of wins, right, in an NBA season. Is there any other team that I'm thinking about that's tanking right now that's been slightly okay, but maybe their numbers are not showing that? Portland Trailblazers. I think the Blazers would be a good example. Maybe. So they have 9-19. Their expected win-loss is 7-21. So they're overachieving by 2. That's interesting. So far, I have not found a single team other than the Toronto Raptors, who is underachieving by 3 wins. This is the biggest underachieving team in the league. Is there somebody else that we could think about here? I mean, in terms of really bad teams here. So we got through Utah, we got through Charlotte, we got through Indiana Pacers. I mean, they're not that bad a team, and they won last night, right? So they are 13-15 right now, and they should be, according to the analytics, 12-16. 13-15, they should be 12-16. So they're overachieving by a win. The Wizards, we already looked at, I think. We looked at the Wizards. They're 4-win team. They should be a 4-win team. What about Philadelphia? The Philadelphia 76ers are 9-17, and they should be 9-17. So they are matching their expected win-loss completely. Okay, so it's basically just the Raptors and the Hornets that I can think of as teams that are massively underachieving. Again, it doesn't matter, in the end. The Raptors have won more quarters, I believe, up until the last game at least. This was true. The Raptors have won more quarters than they've lost. When you do that, you should win at least 40% of your games. The Raptors have not. So this has been some elite level tanking, some incredible last second, buzzer beaters that don't go in. You think about it. How many times have you lost on a buzzer beating shot that didn't go in for you this season? RJ Barrett multiple times. How many times have you lost a game where you were at the line and you just lost because you missed a free throw late? How many times? Now, flip it. How many times have you lost because you had a defensive breakdown or some team just hit a game winner against you? That's happened multiple times too. Even the Brooklyn game where you're up in the fourth quarter and you're favored to win the game with 2 minutes to go and you just crater, right? The Denver game where Scotty Barnes goes out, you're up 6 with less than a minute to go. He gets injured, they score, you're down 4. Somehow you go to overtime and you lose at home. So this is just, it's been very ethical because for the fans in attendance, you're watching a team play good basketball for 75 to 95% of the game and then just crater in the last 5 seconds. So, and sometimes it actually is the other way where the Raptors will come out, they'll put themselves in a huge hole in the second quarter, and then they'll have like a great second half, right? So they're keeping things close, they're developing a lot, and yeah, I think the future is very bright because if Emmanuel Quickly and Bruce Brown play and you're actually trying to win instead of, putting together like crazy lineups for development, I really think there's a chance that you're a 500 team right now, right? So what would you be with one more year of development plus a high-end lottery pick plus a trade? You could be a 50-win team next year. I think the Raptors can be a 50-win team next year. And the only thing that's going to stop them from being a 50-win team next year is signing Davion Mitchell to $10 million and thinking he's your backup point guard of the future. I think that could stop you, right? Liam Lebel saying, or is it Lebel? What is the analytics website you were using in the last podcast? It's called Crafted NBA. There you go. Cheer him up for his good plays and let the rest slide, at least for this year or even the next one. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, we got a super chat here from Alborz Bololi. Thank you so much for this. And also Dylan Shute saying, can you think of a current NBA star with a worse college box plus minus than Ace Bailey at 0.3 box plus minus? No. No, I can't. I can't. Not at all. 0.3 in college? Maybe. Okay, so maybe as a freshman, yes, I can, but not in their last year before going to the NBA. So 0.3 is Bronny James territory, isn't it? I can take a look real quick. Hold on. 0.7. So that was close. Yeah, that's Bronny James territory. 0.3, 0.7. Okay. Brandon Miller was probably I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna guess their box plus minus in their final year. And you let me we'll see how close I am. Brandon Miller, I would assume, was closer to 7, 8. Damn, I am so wrong. Brandon Miller was 12. Wow. I apologize. Scotty Barnes. I should know this off the top of my head. I'm going to guess Scotty was 7. 7.9. 7.9. Underrating Scotty. Man, am I Scotty hater? Okay. Jonathan Mobile was ridiculous last year. I think he was like 11 boxes minus. Thinking who else? In terms of like weak college players, Chosen saying Ace higher potential than Flag and Harper. To be honest, he definitely does not have higher potential than either of those players, in my opinion. He's just bigger than those players. I don't think that necessarily means Albor's Bololi with another super chat. Thank you, saying Ochai is a great fit next to the Denver Nuggets. I think he would work very well in Denver, actually. I'm curious to see what RJ Barrett's stats look like in college. Okay, I'm gonna estimate. Let's estimate. 7. I'm gonna guess 7.5. 8.6. That is not bad. That is not bad. Tyrese Halliburton is a box plus minus merchant. I'm wondering what his analytics were. I'm gonna guess 11. 10, 11. I was right. 11.7. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So to answer, the main question by Dylan Shute, no, I cannot think of a current NBA star with a worse college boxes minus than Ace Bailey. In fact, I cannot even think of an NBA player. Forget star. I can't think of an NBA player with a 0.3 boxes minus in college. Just can't. That being said, boxes minus not everything, but to look at Ace Bailey's game and his stats and to walk away thinking he's better than Dylan Harper, Yegor Demon, those guys, it's hard. It's hard for me to see that right now. He might get a lot better. He might get better. But yeah, I'm perfectly okay with it. Casting Flag and Scotty would go crazy on the defensive end, fam. Yeah, man, it would be great. And I think honestly, they're both players are pretty slept on offensively. To address the final thing, which is, are the Raptors worse with Scotty Barnes on offense? I mean, what an absurd thing to say. But I mean, if the numbers say so, right? See, sometimes the numbers that we look at tend to be the numbers that we want to look at, the numbers we want to agree with, right? So it's really important to sort of shit test your own analysis and say, how bad do I want something to be true? And now am I looking for consensus on whether or not it's true? You want Fred VanVleet to be an all-star. You want Fred VanVleet to be max player, whether you're going to look at his drives per game. You're going to say, well, he's top 5 in the league in drives per game. You want Pascal Siakam to be a superstar. You want to believe that he is. You're going to say, look, he's being doubled as much as LeBron James, right? But he's not LeBron James. And that's where I think bias introduces itself. And I think maybe 15 to 20 years ago, it was difficult to present the numbers to back up your bias. You just sounded crazy, right? So you'd be like, Jerry Stackhouse is just as good as Kobe Bryant. And people would just be like, you're just an idiot, right? Or, Rasheed Wallace is like just a hair away from Tim Duncan. And people would be like, if you say so, crazy person on the street. But today, there's like this definitive thing that you can do, which is like, but look at the EPM. Look at the on-off splits. Look at this and that. I'm perfectly fine with analytics. Obviously, I love analytics. I love numbers. I love stats. I love them particularly because they help me understand what I'm looking at. They help me understand. They don't make me understand. They are not the everything, right? That's not what I'm looking for. That's not everything I'm looking for. I'm not like, okay, my eye test tells me that this player is functionally terrible in the basketball court, but they have a solid 2.2 BPM, and so they're great. That's stupid. Like, don't do that, because these numbers are a measure of situation, fit, shot variance, all of it, right? If Scotty Barnes wanted to be a 7 box plus minus guy right now, he could be. If Scotty Barnes wanted to be an overwhelming positive on offense right now, he could be one. If RJ Barrett wanted to be a 60% true shooting guy right now, he could probably be one. I'm not even capping when I say that. He just can't be so at 30% usage. And for Scotty to be a 7.5 box plus minus guy right now, he can't be one playing the way he's playing. He's going to have to be more of a role man. He's going to have to be more of a corner shooter. Do you know how much more effective Scotty would be if he just stood in the corner and took open catch and shoot shots? Do you know how much more effective his analytics profile would be? How much better the Raptors would be on offense if he did that? Now, why is it that we are so development focused when it comes to players we like? Like, oh, this is good. This, we want reps for Jacoby. We want reps for Grady. But then we're so quick to forget the entire formula when it comes to players we necessarily don't like, right? That's the weird thing to me. That's the weird thing. Let me use the same word that was used to address me. That's weird to me. Okay? It's weird to me. It's weird to me when people get to cap for how great a player Pascal Siakam is and now want to act like it was always expected that he was going to be a second option somewhere else. When y'all were trying to tell everyone that he was actually a superstar, that's weird to me. When you were saying he's worth a super max, or that the Raptors must keep him at all costs, build around him, trade Scotty for Damian Lillard to get Pascal help, it's weird to me that you don't ever bring those takes up. It's weird to me. That's weird. That to me is weird. And it's weird to me if I'm going to use stats like the Raptors are better on offense without Scotty Barnes, and I'm just going to ignore the fact they have been clearly better on both ends with Scotty Barnes. Is him taking a bunch of pull-up threes from 26 feet going to impact the numbers of his metrics? Hell yes, it is. It is. But that does not diminish the fact that the Raptors have a game within a game that they are trying to execute here. The Raptors have to develop players. In order to develop players, it means you have to put them in uncomfortable positions, which means Emmanuel Quickley can be a really positive player if you're putting him in a position where he gets to do all the stuff that he likes and all the stuff that he's already good at, right? The overall philosophical argument of development and why I don't think people give Darko Rajakovic his full due is that it's hard to do something that is actively destructive to your win-loss record as a coach. It's hard to play lineups that are going to force growth for your star player by routinely playing him out of position and putting players around him that don't necessarily synergize well with him. But knowing damn well that the minute you do that, you're going to force development in a direction, I think is the genius move, right? If next year the Raptors are still in this develop everything, and they become very, very bullish on Grady and Ochai, and Grady and Ochai start handling more pick and roll possessions, well, guess what? They're handling pick and roll possessions that are not theirs to handle. Scotty's taking above the break threes when he's not the best above the break three shooter on this team. So every basketball play is a zero-sum equation. If Scotty's handling the point, that means someone else is not handling the point. If Jakob is in the screen, that means someone else is not in the screen. So most basketball teams structure it so that the best player for the best play is in the best spot. The best shooter from the corner is in the corner. The best ball handler is usually bringing it up the court. If that ball handler is taken out of the play or is being pressured too much, the second best ball handler is bringing it up. Teams don't usually go to their third or fourth best ball handler and say, hey, you bring it up. Teams are typically going to put players in positions to succeed. So if a Nick Nurse was handling the development of a Scotty Barnes with the intention to win, then there's a way to turn him into a 24-point per game scorer who pretty much plays 20 feet and in, drives, rolls, right? How often have you seen Scotty as the roll man in a pick and roll this season? And how often have you seen him as the ball handler in a pick and roll? Guess what? The ball handler part is the part that matters. How often have you seen Scotty Barnes popping up from three this year? How often? Not a lot. Actually, take a look at something briefly before we get out of here. Wait, what the hell did I do here? I apologize. Hang on a sec. Hold on. Stat Muse is having a moment here. There we go. This is progress, man. This is great progress. He's good inside the paint, but look at these giant blotches out here. Are these effective shots? 33.3%, 26.7%. But just a few years ago, the bulk of his threes were just coming from the corners. He was rarely ever above the break. These are the hardest threes in the NBA. These are the ones that are most contested. Self-generated above the break threes are Damian Lillard threes, Paul George threes, Kawhi Leonard threes, man. These corner threes right here, these are Ochai Agbaji, OG Anunoby threes. You want more of these if you're Scotty Barnes. And you got to convince a player who was actually not very assertive offensively at doing things that are not effective. Like, I think that's the thing that people really don't realize with Scotty is this is a player who's wired to win. This is not a player who likes to hijack the offense. This is not a player who likes to hunt for his shots. So when he goes out and he takes 7 or 8 above the break threes, off the dribble, pull up, contested, that is him going against a pre-ingrained sort of impulse to not do that. That's the effective part of the development. Him ball handling, snake dribble into the paint, turn around, pull up, or turn around, step back, midi, fade away. These are the types of shots that you need him to get comfortable taking. But the numbers that these people want to look at would tell you he would be much, much better as a role man, which is, effectively for 2 years, whether it be the Raptors show, it's basically this entire cabal of Raptors content creators that are all plugged in with the media. They've all had this idea that Scotty needs to get his ass in the paint. Stop taking threes. Where do you think the fans get it from, man? Why do you think I'm pushing so hard? You think I'm just angry? Do you think that's it? You think I just need something to cry about? You think I'm just toxic? Like, what do you think it is? I mean, I'm venting for a reason. And the reason is simple. I don't agree with this notion that we are going to be positive about the players that we like in terms of, they need their development reps, but we're going to be negative about the players we don't necessarily like because we don't think that their development is as important. That's stupid to me. Scotty's development is the most crucial element of how Darko Rajakovic will be judged as a coach. If you can turn him into a real superstar, you have done your job and you should have a statue built of you outside Scotiabank Arena. That's my view on it. Okay. Grady is the second highest player of consequence on this team. If you can turn him into a really good movement shooter with competent level defense, flashing sub all-star potential by year 4, you deserve another statue. We can just have a bunch of Darko statues outside the, I was going to say the ACC, the Scotiabank Arena. So this is what it is. And if you're going to look at numbers and say, well, the Raptors are negative with Scotty Barnes on the court, well, that to me is missing the forest from the trees. Big time. Anyways, one more super chat here. Shamshi is 18 years old, man. W community. Yeah, Shamshi is 18 years old. Is he now 19? When does he turn 19? Is like the last day of the year? He's almost 19 now. I'll tell you that much right now. So I think his birthday is late December. So Ulrich is December 30th. Holy crap, man. December 30th, 2005. Wow. He was one day away from not being eligible for the NBA draft. Zodiac Jack with the hottest take. 5-me VJ Edgecombe with the first pick. This is what happens when ChatGPT enters your basketball takes. I'm just kidding, Zodiac Jack. What do you think? What do you think VJ Edgecombe is as a player that you would take him over Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper? I might see him over. I might consider him over Ace Bailey. I might. Yeah. Quick 2-3 notes very quickly. Number one, absolutely in 8 days, wish Ulrich a happy birthday. We'll do it. If we have a live that day, we will definitely do it. Number one. Number two, fourth quarter game. How are y'all doing? I hope you guys are doing well. You have 9 more days left in this year. Please make them count as much as you can. Third thing was vote Scotty for All-Star, vote RJ for All-Star. Vote your players in for All-Star. The Raptors social media is really pushing this hard. Like, their content has been awesome this year, pushing Scotty for All-Star. I don't know who the Raptors hired for the social media, but whoever it's been, that dude is awesome, or that girl is awesome. Like, whoever the hell is doing it is friggin' amazing. So vote Scotty, vote RJ for All-Star. There was one more thing that I was thinking. Yes, I was supposed to go to the game tonight, and I am just choosing not to. I am absolutely behind on the Pendant stuff, so I'm going to focus on that very, very much. We are going to do a post-game live after today's game against the Houston Rockets. RJ Barrett is playing. I believe Emmanuel Quickley and Jakob Poeltl are not, but we will see. Maybe Jakob will be a game time decision. With Alperen Sengun in the paint, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason on the perimeter, their depth, their bench, they're not a team that chokes away a lot of winnable games. So I think if Jakob Poeltl doesn't play, this is going to be a really difficult game to win, which is fine because most of y'all are not rooting for wins right now. But, again, a win against the Houston Rockets would count for, if you're going to win any game this year for the remainder of the year, let it be this game. Okay. A different way to look at wins and losses is simple. You never want to win against a team that you're trying to be worse than. Number one. Number two, ideally, you don't want to win games against your own conference. We need to do an entire live about the math of tanking. But one of the most important things that I realized over time is a win against your conference hurts you twice when you're tanking. A win against the West or the other conference only hurts you once. So yeah, if you're looking at the upcoming schedule, yeah, this is the game you want to win because it's something that, again, these are human beings we're talking about. You don't want to go into Christmas with a 9-10 game losing streak. The Raptors, I think, are on 7-game losing streak at this point, or 6-game losing streak. So if you want to just win one, just, expect the Raptors to actually try to win tonight. That's what I'm going to say. Expect the Raptors to go out and try to win tonight. I think they will try to win tonight. Joshua Avery saying Scotty drops 40 points and the W. Fred VanVleet goes 1 for 20 from 3 and an early Christmas gift. 1 for 20. I'm willing to put money that that's not going to happen, but 1 for 10 could happen. And Davion Mitchell is actually a great defender for Fred VanVleet. I think he's the type of defender that would give Fred VanVleet a lot of trouble. So unleash Davion on Fred early and see what you can do to disrupt Fred. Maybe Fred will have a point to prove in his return. Maybe he'll want to, show up his old team that now that they're really bad, maybe he'll want to score 30, 40 points. Who knows, man? Dylan Brooks, right? They just have a lot of wing defenders, man. Dylan Brooks. Yeah, RJ is going to have a complicated time, I think, and Scotty will have a complicated time. They'll both have a really difficult time against their wing defenders. Amen Thompson is legit one of the 5 to 10 best wing defenders in the league. IQ out as well. Yes, Emmanuel Quickly is out. Jakob is out. So yeah. Lachlan Quinn saying, "Hey Rob, could you elaborate twice why it hurts you? Could you elaborate on why it hurts you twice for your own conference?" Sure. So when you win a game against the Indiana Pacers, right? You add a W to your column and a loss to their column, right? So in the end, when you look at the math of whether or not the Raptors will go for it, won't go for it, tear it down, it always comes down to relative to what? Maybe I'm not explaining this correctly. Let me try. Actually, hold on. Let me pull up the NBA standings. Maybe it'll be better to visually explain this than it is to try to just sort of reason my way into this. It's actually not that complicated. I'm just doing a terrible job of explaining it. So, so here's the East, right? Y'all can see this? Yeah, perfect. Let me make this a little bit. Okay, so the Cavs have 25 wins, 4 losses. Now, to use the example of the Indiana Pacers versus the Rockets, right? When you beat the Indiana Pacers, let's say like our next game is against Indiana. So we would become 8-21 and they would become 13-16. 13-16 knocks them down. So right now, what you are hoping for, if you're a Toronto Raptors fan, is for everybody else to go up while you go down. That's how tanking is done. Now, obviously, when it comes down to the draft, it's not conference ranked, right? So the worst team. Okay. Let me try this again. The last team in the world that you want to lose to is this team. You don't want to lose to them because at some point you're trying to catch them. You don't want to lose to this team right here, the Hornets, the Wizards, the Nets. Any team that you expect to be at the bottom of the conference, you want that team to beat you so that you add a loss in your column and a win in their column. Okay? Because at the end of the year, it's the losses that count. Okay? And you don't want to add any losses to a team that you're trying to be worse than. So the worst team, in my opinion, that you could lose to is Washington, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Pistons, Chicago, Pacers. These teams. No. Hold on. No. The worst team you can lose to is the Wizards, the Hornets, the Sixers. No. The Wizards, Hornets, Nets. Those are the 3 worst teams because those are the three teams in the Eastern Conference that could bottom out like you. The next worst team that you never want to lose to is the Portlands and Utahs of the world because those are teams that will be competing with you at the bottom of the draft order. Then you go to conference play-in teams because the better this group of teams right here. Don't worry. I know I've taken like 5 minutes to try to explain one simple thing, but I actually got it now. So right now, what's your play-in situation looking like? Heat, Hawks, Pacers, Bulls, Pistons. That's sort of the range of play-in. You could say the Nets are outside looking in, but they've traded Dennis Schroeder. They've pretty much opted out of this. So it's really at this point, it's these 5 teams right here. These 5 teams will determine whether or not it will be okay for the Raptors to tank at the deadline. Now, if these 5 teams remain 3, 4, 5 games under 500, right now the Pistons are 5 games under 500, right? So what if the Raptors right now, consider the following situation. What if the Pistons lose 4 straight and the Raptors win 4 straight? Now, how do you tank? because your entire fan base in the media is saying, hey, you're like one game away from the Pistons or you're 10th. So what you need right now is for the Pistons to win so that this gap between 10 and you widens, right? It doesn't matter who's 10 in the Western Conference. See, 10 in the Western Conference is an above 500 team. These teams don't matter. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. Now, if you're going to take if you're going to take a win on your record and add a loss to somebody's record, let it be a team that you have absolutely nothing to do with in terms of competition. And that's these three teams right here. Really, it's these three teams. These three teams are not going to be competing with you for lottery balls. These three teams are good wins. These three teams build self-esteem. So if you're going to beat any teams, let it be these four teams right here. These are the four best teams in the West Conference right now. I have no problem beating them. But if you beat the Pelicans, which the Raptors already did, that sucks. Because right now, if you hadn't beat the Pelicans, they'd have 6 wins and 23 losses, which means they'd be a lot closer to you, right? They've lost 6 straight. If they just keep losing and they shut down, every player, you're not going to catch them. And they're in a tougher conference. So yeah, so I think that it's really, really important to keep the math of tanking in mind when we talk about it. So Lachlan Quinn saying, I see. So you're saying if it's a win against their own conference, it does more damage to their tanking ability because it has a direct relationship with the record in the conference. Yes. So yeah, effectively in the end, everything comes down to what can you sell to your fan base, right? If the 10th place team, which is the Pistons right now, is a 500 team, you will be out of the play-in picture sooner. But if the Pistons keep losing, then it will be harder to sell your fan base. That's basically what I'm saying. So you don't want to lose to the Pacers. You don't want you don't want to win against the Pacers. You don't want to win against the Pistons. You don't want to win against the Bulls. You don't want to win against the Nets. You don't want to win against Charlotte, Washington, Brooklyn. These teams. You just don't want to beat these teams. You want to beat Houston. You don't mind beating Boston because it's just, again, the competition is not the same. Plus, you get to have your team feel good about it. Maybe one win against Boston, like you ask yourself, what is one win against Boston actually worth in the context of the Detroits and Brooklyns of the world? Maybe one win against Boston for your self-esteem and your overall, fan sentiment and team morale and whatever is worth like 3-4 wins against Boston, 3-4 wins against Brooklyn or Detroit or Washington. Do you feel happy when we beat Washington? But there's a fan on Twitter that when you lose to Washington, instead of celebrating, they're going to say, this team is awful. I don't like that fan, whoever it is. I don't like that fan. I don't like beating the Hornets. Okay. Raymond Tong saying, and you don't want to be a treadmill team again. Bingo. That's it. And again, to reiterate, when you look at what the Raptors did in 2023, who did they beat? When they went on that big run in the second half of the season, who did they beat? They beat a lot of Charlottes, man. They beat a lot of Charlottes. And that's not what we're measuring against. So expect a competitive game tonight. I can't wait. 6:00 game, 5 hours. Can't wait. It's going to be good. I think the Raptors are going to be competitive. I think they're going to try to really go for it. I think you're going to see lineups and game plan that actually makes sense because I think the Raptors don't mind winning against this team. So they'll go out and they'll try to win against this team. They'll go out and try to win against Boston. And then when they face the Brooklyns, and the Detroits of the world, you'll see some really funky lineups. That's how you tank. All right. Mo Beasy saying they're not beating Houston. I didn't say they're going to beat Houston. I said they'll try to beat Houston. And to be completely frank with you, the Raptors haven't tried to beat a lot of teams this year. They've tried to stay in a lot of games, but they tried to beat Denver. I think they tried to beat Denver. I think there's just certain teams where this team and the coaching staff and the organization and the players all get on board like, this is one we want to win. And I think that that's the best way to tank. I really do. I think the worst way to tank is to play the shittiest brand of basketball and to lose all your assets and to basically the Wizards. I hate how the Wizards are tanking. But the way the Raptors are doing it is stay in those games and then actually go and try to win the important ones. Now, the Raptors have not beat a single really good team this year. Might Houston be their first? We'll see. Chosen saying if IQ plays, they can beat Houston. If IQ plays and is in rhythm and is looking more like, you know, how he did last year as opposed to how he's looked this year, yes, they could beat Brooklyn. Beat top teams is a good measuring stick. I agree. Anyways, talk to you guys later. This live has run very rambly and very long. I'll apologize in advance. I don't think there's going to be timestamps for this one, so I'll apologize in advance to anyone listening after who finds this to be a little bit rambly. I hope it was more entertaining than I think it was. But yeah, and again, if you find it wrong to address other content creators in the way that I did in this live, I'll tell you that I find it to be more wrong to address people indirectly without actually addressing them. So two wrongs don't make a right, but I feel I needed to say what I needed to say because I don't think that the Davion take was necessarily right. No, I think it was completely wrong. And I don't think that it's right to gas up a player and then when that player plays poorly to act like you weren't doing it. You were just answering a question. No, you were gassing him up. Your content shows that. All right. Take care.